Hi, I'm Jim Gosart, Vice President of Republicans Overseas.
And I'm John Richardson. I work with Republicans overseas.
We want to talk to you today about another topic that uniquely impacts Americans living abroad. And John, that's a tax called the transition tax. And boy, this is a favorite of mine, John, because setting up a small business is tough, no matter where you set it up, the United States, Europe, elsewhere. But I had a small business in Hong Kong for several years. And guess what? After I had that business in place for about 7 years, the thing was working out just fine. Um, I discovered this thing called a transition tax. And you're not going to believe this, John, but I ended up paying a fairly hefty percentage of tax on about 7 or 8 years of retained earnings on that business. How the heck does this work?
Well, thank God that's in the past, Jim. That was part of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And, of course, the whole problem was to lower the corporate tax rate, and they had to find a way to pay for that. So the big multinationals made a deal that they basically would pay a tax on their past retained earnings. But everybody forgot that somehow that applied to individual Americans as well, largely people who lived abroad. And Jim, what's amazing about it is that, first of all, like the subpart F in guilty, it was saying, you know what, we're going to make you pay a tax on the income earned by your corporation, even though you never received it. That's the first thing, right? So it's sort of, fake income. And that's largely what the current guilty tax is. But you know what they then did, Jim? They said, not only do you have to pay a tax on income you never received that was received by your corporation, but you know what? We're going to make you do it retroactively for 31 years. 31 years. So what they did was they said, buddy, if you are stupid enough and acting in a way that is so contrary to the interests of America that you are running a small corporation outside of America, then your punishment for that is that you are going to be taxed retroactively on 31 years of earnings. This was unbelievable. People use small business corporations for many reasons outside the United States, including in Canada, largely as private pension plans. So the bottom line on this transition tax thing is that basically the U.S. Treasury confiscated many of the pensions of U.S. citizens living abroad who've been paying into these for like 30 years. So, it's always
It's unbelievable when you think about that angle to the transition tax, and I know that tax was intended on sort of a forcing function, a less painful forcing function on the repatriation of large holdings of cash of major corporations from abroad. But the small guys like me and a whole bunch of others around the world got smacked pretty hard by it. And I wonder, John, what happened to businesses. Now mine was a consulting business. It was a painful tax to have incurred on my business, but I got through it. I can't imagine what businesses did if the intention of your retained earnings, but it was to use it as collateral to say expand in and invest in plant and equipment, and that's what your intention was of making use of your retained earnings. What the heck happened to businesses that got hit that way? Is that really the intention of the Treasury Department to dissuade and prohibit Americans from investing in that kind of situation? It seems almost unthinkable.
Yeah, unthinkable is the right word because they don't think about it. And they don't think about it because they're not really aware of, the existence and the problems of citizenship taxation. To answer your first question, the way people dealt with it, they just liquidated their businesses. That's it. Business over. Boom. I'm out of business. Courtesy of an unintended consequence of, a U.S. law that was, I believe, really a negotiated settlement between the multinationals who wanted their tax rate lowered from 35% to 21%. I mean, that's a sweet deal, right? I mean, many taxpayers, probably all taxpayers,
Mhm.
would be willing to pay some kind of price to get their taxes lowered to that degree. But,
Sure.
nobody considered, the problem of U.S. citizens living outside the United States. Interestingly, U.S. residents who did these things through S corps got a carve out, okay? But
Hmm.
individual Americans living outside the United States were absolutely hung out to dry. And this is
Yeah.
why it's very important when thinking about tax reform to not fall into the trap of, well, we're going to fiddle around here or there or fix this or that. Because as long as citizenship taxation exists, there will be these kinds of indescribably horrible unintended consequences. And so the
Yeah.
bottom line is, Jim, that not only citizenship has to go, but citizenship tax has to go, but it has to go in a way that is understood to be the complete and total severance of citizenship from tax residency. None of these carve outs that will work temporarily for somebody, so that a carve out today, because it's temporary, means you're going to be carved up later tomorrow. No, totally severing citizenship from tax residency.
Totally agree, John. And this is probably a really good example of why only repealing citizenship-based taxation and severing citizenship from tax residency, that's really the only solution here. I'm sure that Congress had no intention of clobbering small businesses like mine, yet no doubt thousands were. And to your example, I'm sure a lot of people had their pensions that were saved in this type of a corporation, had them hit very, very badly by what Congress may have regarded as an unintended negative consequence. So really, the only solution is to sever citizenship and tax residency and repeal citizenship-based taxation. Just do it the way the rest of the world does it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not radical. This is just behaving rationally the way the rest of the world does. I mean, look, taxation is horrible and irrational enough without making it even worse by, having citizenship taxation, which really, in effect, is just, taxing non-residents of the United States on income not sourced to the United States. That's all it is, right? I mean, if you really understand it.
Yep, totally
But
agree, John.
tumor, and that cancerous tumor has got to go.